3, 2, 1, action. Welcome to the Hóčhoka podcast.
Hello, Mitakiyepi, and welcome to Hóčhoka, here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School campus. I'm Scott Wooster, and I'm joined by Hope McCloskey. Today, the two of us host Joseph Marshall III, award-winning author of 18 books, cultural and historical consultant, teacher, craftsman, administrator, actor, and public speaker. He joins us to tape for a series directed primarily to our families about the vital task of reinvigorating the cultural identity of Lakota youth. In this podcast, we explore language, memory, and cultural identity. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us today. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
So, Joseph, I understand that you describe the pre-reservation Lakota community in the book and what we've lost. I've been fortunate enough to be close to my grandmothers and learn their wisdom and their knowledge and just overall their past. But they lived in the boarding school era, too, as well. So I've heard bits and pieces of that.
Sure.
And so I was wondering if you could tell me what it was like to live our Lakota culture before the effects of forced assimilation.
Well, I'm sure that it was obviously a lot different than it was even for my parents' generation. My grandparents on both sides, paternal and maternal, were part of a generation where they were very connected to their parents and their grandparents. The form of the language that I speak probably comes from the late 1800s, the way that my great-great-grandparents used the language, because my grandparents learned it from their parents learned it from their parents, so forth. So I learned it from my grandparents in the form they were using, the words they were using, the patterns they were using back in the late 1800s. So, it was different. If somebody learns the language now, it just by time itself, things change. And the language is slightly different than it was, 2 or 3 generations ago. Same way with the overall lifestyle. There were more the families were closer in villages. They actually lived together in villages. And today we're scattered all over the place. Some of my children live on the West Coast. Some of them they're all over the place. We don't have that sense of village. And not so much the physical sense of village, but the sense of community that binds that extended family together. So if you can visualize a village, hence a community in the old days, before reservations, the village was almost always, depending on the topography, in a circle. And the teepees were arranged in concentric circles. And if your teepee was next to your relative's teepee and so forth, the next time the village moved to somewhere else, then you put your teepee in the same place. You just didn't go hodgepodge and say, well, I'm going to be over here for a while. You put it in the same place so that everybody could still physically relate to each other the way they did in the previous village. All those kind of things did was strengthen the sense of community, the sense of belonging. Relatives were never very far away. Grandparents were never very far away, especially the grandparents. Because everybody in the village, everybody in the community, everybody in the extended family had a role to play in that society. Whether you're a young adult, or whether you're a child, whether as a grandparent, you all had a purpose in strengthening that community, enhancing that community, and certainly teaching the next generation. We don't do that anymore. That's the difference. There is no sense of community. There is no sense of closeness. And when that bond isn't there, because it was enhanced, that bond was strengthened by the physicality of the village. You knew that uncle and auntie were over here, and grandma and grandpa were over here, and everybody in the village was probably your relative in one way or the other. We don't know that today. Mm-hmm. We don't experience that sense of belonging to a very large family. We have families, certainly we do, but we don't. The dynamics are not the same. The strength of the family is not available to us the way it used to be back in the old days. So that's what I mean. Mm-hmm. If the family bonds have been weakened by the intrusion of another culture, by our lifestyle, by the fact that we don't speak our language anymore. All of those factors weaken the culture and weaken the sense of family, mm-hmm. unfortunately.
Yeah.
The culture, Lakota culture, everybody had a sense of place, a mm-hmm. sense of purpose, a sense of family, a sense of community, and because of that, they had a sense of identity too. And then came the Europeans, the white mm-hmm. man, and you describe what the devastating loss right. to Lakota culture, identity, society. It's a touchy topic.
It is.
And it's definitely 100% mm-hmm. covered in your book. And I know you have had mixed reactions from people, as sure. we talked about that a little bit before. And the truth is that it was devastating. There mm-hmm. were things that happened. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, there are things that for whatever reason, we didn't talk about, or we were not allowed to talk about. And I think it's way past the time to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. We don't have to beat each other over the head with the bloody stump of the past. We just mm-hmm. have to be honest about mm-hmm. what really happened. Mm-hmm. And that's sometimes hard to do. And the fact of the matter is, the invasion of another culture diminished ours. Mm-hmm. Pure and simple. That's putting it mildly.
Right.
Putting it very mildly. And the biggest thing we lost is that sense of who we are, individually and collectively. Mm-hmm. If you don't grow up speaking the language, then you lose part of that connection you have with your community and with your family and with your society and your culture. You can still have it, but there's something very enabling about being able to speak your own language and hear it, mm-hmm. The way I was fortunate to do. So I think that's, we've lost land. We lost our territory. We lost our way of life. We don't live in teepees anymore. We don't chase buffalo anymore. That's never going to come back. I mean, that's the stark reality. That does not mean, however, that we cannot have a sense of reality, a sense of identity about who we are.
Yes.
As Lakota people or Native people, any kind of indigenous people. That's the greatest loss we have, is our sense of identity, our sense of who we are. I would like to tell a story of my grandfather and I taking a walk. He would take me along on walks for whatever reason. We would go down along the river or up on the prairie, on the flats, on the meadows. And there was always a reason for the walks. We would be gathering wood, or we'd be looking at game trails or whatever. He had a lesson to impart. So he would, whatever trail we were walking, he would stop now and then and turn me around and say, "Look back at the trail." So I would. And I was curious about why he did that. Mm-hmm. But I never had the nerve. I didn't have the nerve to ask him why, like some kids are. Finally, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, he did that again on one of our walks. So I said, "Grandpa, why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. Why am I looking back at the trail?" And he just nodded and smiled and said, "Because one of these times I'm going to send you back down that trail by yourself. And if you don't remember the way, you'll get lost." Mm. So I thought about that for a while. Of course, being a kid, it doesn't have the meaning that it did for me mm-hmm. that it does now.
Yes.
And as I got older, then I finally figured it out. That trail that we came down is our past. It's who we are. Mm-hmm. It's who we traveled as a group of people collectively, and what road we traveled individually in our lives. And we have to know that. We have to remember that. And if we don't, we lose a sense of identity. Mm-hmm. If you don't know where you came from, how the heck do you know where you're going to go? And throughout all of my life, I can say this, that there have been struggles. We all have good times and bad times in our lives, and we're not exempt from that. But the one thing that has been my source of strength is I knew darn well who I am, mm-hmm. because of my grandparents, because of the stories, because of those kind of lessons. So identity is the one thing that helps guide me through my life, through this world. It doesn't give me any advantage over anybody else, but it does allow me to know who I am. And that's the one thing that we're lacking as indigenous people, mm-hmm. and certainly as Lakota people, is it? We're getting further and further away from that sense of identity. I like to ask people, what kind of things do you do every day? Think about the things you do every day as a Native person. And are those things that you do, the things that you say, the things that you think and speak, are they more like European, or are they more like Lakota? And it's a tough question. Mm-hmm. It's the one question where you need to be really, really honest with yourself about the answer. Yeah. Because that speaks to your identity. If you speak only English and don't know any Lakota as a Lakota person, you lost part of your identity. Mm-hmm. If you do not practice your own spiritual beliefs, you lost part of your identity. You lost part of who you are. And, there's only one way to do that, and that's to go back and reconnect with that. And I think we need to do that more and more. So identity is critical.
I think so too, and I think you deliberately, everything was taken away. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Everything that was possible was taken away deliberately. Right. Yeah. Identity can't be taken away in the end, I don't think, but it has to be carried on, it has to be passed along, and has to be nurtured.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right, precisely.
And I know for someone as young as me and like in a different generation than you guys, it's a bit tougher for people my age and people younger to grasp onto that. Mm-hmm. And I know that I see children, younger than me, who have like a full grasp on like the Lakota culture, and I'm like so excited for them, and I'm so happy that I can look back and say they're gonna carry on something that I might not be able to. Right. But I know I try to do as much as I can, because like I always take a moment like every morning and every night to like think about my family, and think about just like I kind of take a moment and thank Tunkashila for letting me live another day and letting me be able to connect with people, because I know that I have a lot of white friends. I have probably a bit more white friends than I do Native friends, and that just speaks to not that I'm keeping on to European customs like you've said, but it's just how the world happened, But even then, I still try and teach them some things of the Lakota culture. Like I had a big discussion with them this past summer of why I cut my hair, because I was like, I'm going to keep my hair long. I was like, that's going to be my main goal. And then I had to cut it, unfortunately, because of a loss. And so I told them about that, and they're like, I didn't know that's why you cut it. I was just like, that's just what happened. And I tell them why I have to take time off a week every summer for Sundance. I'm like, that is one thing that I would not enjoy missing, because that's when I get to see my family. I get to see extended relatives I haven't seen since last Sundance, And I know that sometimes my siblings I don't know if they don't care for it, or they're not necessarily grasping at why when my grandparents speak Lakota to me, I understand it. I don't speak it, but I understand what they're trying to tell me and what they're saying to me. you know, like I probably wouldn't be able to respond back, but I understand. And so they always question why I know so much, and I'm like, I don't know that much, honestly. Right. I'm like, I know enough to get by. And so that's why whenever like I said before, when I do see like a younger cousin who's going to be like the next probably Sundance leader, I'm like, somebody is finally getting there.
Joseph, once again, thank you for joining us here in the Hóčhoka at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School campus, where we talk about issues central to Native America today. Until next time, stay centered.